We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory wasn't just a children's fantasy musical. It was a fever dream stitched together with corporate deals, production chaos, and the eccentric brilliance of Gene Wilder. Behind the candy-coated sets, tension brewed. Kids fainted, actors suffered heat exhaustion, and Oompa Loompas couldn't even understand the director. This isn't the sugar-sweet tale you remember. This is the raw truth. Today we're peeling back the golden wrapper and revealing 20 weird facts about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, from near disasters on set to hidden deals that changed Hollywood forever. And wait until you hear the bonus fact, the most shocking secret buried in chocolate history. Let's dive in. The movie only exists because of a candy deal. What audiences didn't know was that Willy Wonka wasn't really born in Hollywood. It was created in a boardroom. The film was essentially a 2-hour advertisement for a chocolate bar. Quaker Oats wanted to break into the candy business, and they bought the rights to Roald Dahl's book just to launch a product line. The studio wasn't MGM or Warner Brothers, but a cereal company. Production chaos followed because the executives cared more about candy wrappers than screen dailies. Ironically, the actual Wonka bar melted too easily during shipping and had to be pulled from shelves. The movie outlived the candy, but its strange commercial origin shaped everything from casting to its rushed production schedule. Not a Hollywood dream, but a corporate experiment that somehow became a classic. Gene Wilder's entrance was a trick on the cast. When Gene Wilder first appears as Wonka, he limps with a cane, then rolls into a somersault before greeting the crowd. What looks like a quirky flourish was actually Wilder's personal demand. He told producers he would only take the role if he could design his introduction. His reasoning was chilling. From that moment on, the audience would never know when Wonka was telling the truth. Wilder insisted on complete unpredictability, shaping the character into a mix of genius and menace. The cast didn't even know what he was planning. Their shocked reactions in the scene are authentic. Nobody expected him to leap forward. It wasn't just an entrance. It was a declaration of control, both for the character and the actor behind the madness. The Chocolate River was a disaster. The Chocolate River wasn't real chocolate. It was a foul-smelling concoction of water, food coloring, and powdered cocoa. The problem? After hours under hot production lights, it began to rot and smell rancid. Cast members compared it to spoiled milk, and crew members gagged while filming. For Augustus Gloop, played by Michael Ballner, the river scene was even worse. He had to fall into the disgusting mixture repeatedly. The young actor admitted he couldn't swim, so a real safety team had to stay off camera to keep him from drowning in what was essentially hot, stinking sludge. What looked whimsical on screen was, in reality, a nauseating endurance test for everyone involved. The river wasn't sweet magic. It was a stomach-churning nightmare that the cast never forgot. The child actors suffered heat. Exhaustion behind the dazzling candy sets, conditions were brutal. The chocolate room was filmed in a Munich studio under scorching lights with no proper air circulation. Temperatures soared above 100 degrees and the young cast members suffered from heat exhaustion. Julie Dawn Cole, who played Veruca Salt, later revealed that children fainted between takes and were constantly dehydrated. Meanwhile, the Oompa Loompa actors, many of whom didn't speak English, were dressed in heavy, uncomfortable costumes and wigs, making the conditions even harsher. What looks like a magical wonderland in the film was, in reality, an overheated pressure cooker that left kids exhausted and crew members scrambling. The sweet illusion of Wonka's factory was built on sweat, struggle, and uncomfortable realities hidden behind candy-colored curtains. Roald Dahl hated the film. You'd think the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would celebrate seeing his work adapted. Instead, Roald Dahl despised the movie. He reportedly hated the script changes, especially the shift of focus from Charlie to Willy Wonka. He also despised the choice of Gene Wilder, believing Wonka should have been darker and more mysterious, not playful and eccentric. Dahl even walked out of the premiere and later refused to allow a sequel. For decades, his estate wouldn't grant adaptation rights because of this betrayal. What audiences adored as a whimsical classic, Dahl dismissed as a crude distortion of his story. The clash between the visionary author and the filmmakers turned the movie into a bitter divide, one that still colors how purists see the adaptation today. The boat scene terrified the cast, too. The infamous tunnel boat ride remains one of the most disturbing moments in children's cinema. Flashing lights, creepy insects, and Gene Wilder's unhinged recitation created nightmare fuel for generations. But here's the twist. The child actors weren't warned. Director Mel Stuart kept them in the dark to capture genuine fear. The screaming, the nervous glances, those were real reactions from kids trapped on a rocking boat under searing lights. Wilder's intensity added another layer. He refused to break character, glaring and spitting lines with terrifying conviction. Even the adults on set admitted the atmosphere was unsettling. What plays as a surreal fantasy sequence on screen was, for the cast, a moment of genuine dread. It wasn't a ride into wonder, it was a plunge into chaos, one that left the children shaken long after cameras stopped rolling. Veruca Salt's scream was genuine pain. When Veruca Salt meets her downfall in The Golden, Goose Room Julie Dawn Cole unleashes her signature bratty screams. But not all of it was acting. During filming, she had to stand on a trapdoor rigged to drop her down the garbage chute. The mechanism was rough, and the actress ended up with bruises and scrapes from repeated takes. On top of that, she suffered a minor injury during the nut room sequence when one of the trained squirrels scratched her. Cole later recalled that her time on set was both magical and painful, admitting that she often left scenes in tears. The spoiled princess character she played so convincingly wasn't only written into the script. Her on-screen suffering was partly real, captured raw on film for audiences who had no idea. The Oompa Loompas faced language barriers. The Oompa Loompas were played by 10 actors, many of them immigrants from Turkey, Germany, and Malta, who didn't speak English fluently. Communication on set was chaotic. Director Mel Stuart struggled to explain choreography and blocking, often resorting to pantomimes and demonstrations. The singing sequences, those were dubbed entirely in post-production. Behind the cheerful orange makeup and green wigs, frustration brewed. The actors endured long hours in uncomfortable prosthetics and ill-fitting costumes, often without fully understanding the direction being given. Some even complained that they weren't treated with the same respect as the rest of the cast. What audiences saw as whimsical musical numbers were, in reality, stitched together from confusion, improvisation, and patient editing. The Oompa Loompas became iconic, but their road to screen was anything but easy or magical. Charlie nearly lost his role. Peter Ostrom, the young actor who played Charlie Bucket, wasn't the studio's first choice. Casting directors struggled to find the right blend of innocence and quiet strength, auditioning hundreds of boys across Europe and America. Ostrom was discovered in Cleveland, but even then, the producers hesitated, worrying he lacked experience. He had never acted professionally before. During rehearsals, some executives even considered replacing him mid-shoot. But Gene Wilder reportedly intervened, insisting Ostrom had the authentic humility needed to balance Wonka's flamboyance. Ironically, the boy who almost lost the role ended up delivering one of cinema's most beloved child performances. Ostrom never acted again, leaving Hollywood behind to become a veterinarian. His single performance remains frozen in time, a reminder of how fragile and unpredictable casting decisions can be in film history. The fizzy lifting drinks scene caused injuries. In the fizzy lifting drink sequence, Charlie and Grandpa Joe float dangerously close to the spinning ceiling fan. What looks whimsical was, in reality, a hazardous stunt. Peter Ostrom and Jack Albertson were strapped into hidden harnesses while wires lifted them upward. But the rigging wasn't flawless. During multiple takes, the wires twisted, slamming them against the set walls. Ostrom later admitted he left the scene with bruises on his legs and arms. Crew members worried about the proximity of the real fan blades, which had to be slowed to reduce risk. Still, the danger was real. One wrong move could have been disastrous. What audiences remember as a magical, weightless moment was actually a dangerous balancing act between illusion and injury. Gene Wilder refused to break character. On set, Gene Wilder blurred the line between actor and character. He didn't just play Willy Wonka, he lived him. Wilder refused to break character between takes, unsettling the child actors who never knew if he was joking or serious. Peter Ostrom remembered Wilder whispering strange riddles during breaks, leaving him puzzled and even intimidated. This wasn't method acting in the usual sense. It was Wilder's way of keeping the unpredictability alive. He believed that if the kids saw him as mysterious and a little frightening, their reactions on screen would feel genuine. It worked. The result was a performance equal parts whimsical and sinister, balancing childlike wonder with an unnerving edge. For the young cast, though, it meant living with constant unease, never quite sure if the real man behind the hat was stranger than the character himself. The chocolate room was real candy, sort of. The chocolate room was designed as the heart of the film, and the set designers went all out. Unlike modern productions, which would rely on CGI, nearly everything was practical. The giant mushrooms, edible marshmallow. The giant gummy bears, real candy. Even the oversized lollipops were edible, at least for a short while. But here's the problem. Under hot studio lights, the candy began to melt, warp, and attract insects. Some pieces rotted before shooting was complete. The actors admitted that while the room looked delicious, much of it tasted stale and inedible. For the kids, it was both magical and disappointing. The Factory of Dreams was a set of half-edible props that quickly spoiled. On screen, it's a paradise of sweets. In reality, it was a sticky, buggy mess that left the crew swatting flies between takes. Julie Dawn, Cole kept stolen props. Julie Dawn Cole, who played Veruca Salt, was the only child actor to keep souvenirs from the set. She admitted later that she couldn't resist pocketing treasures from Wonka's world. Among them were one of the golden eggs, and even some candy wrappers used during filming. For years, she held on to them as mementos of the experience. Cole's small act of theft became legendary among fans, especially since nearly all the original props were destroyed after filming. Today, those items would be priceless pieces of movie history. Her mischievous act mirrored her spoiled on-screen character in a strange twist of life, imitating art. While Veruca Salt demanded everything, Julie Dawn Cole quietly made sure she took something real home from Wonka's factory. The director lied to the kids constantly. Mel Stewart believed the best way to get authentic performances from the child actors was to keep them in the dark. He lied to them regularly about what would happen in scenes. For example, the kids didn't know when the giant chocolate doors would open, or what Gene Wilder would do next. In the boat scene, the director deliberately refused to explain the terrifying visuals. The element of surprise was baked into the production process. While this produced genuine reactions on film, it also meant the children lived in a state of constant uncertainty. They weren't actors following a script, they were kids reacting to chaos. It gave the film its raw edge, but at the cost of comfort and transparency. The magical spontaneity of the movie was built on deliberate manipulation. The lickable wallpaper was a health hazard. One of the most iconic moments is the lickable wallpaper scene. Each fruit pattern was supposed to taste different. But here's the disturbing truth. The wallpaper was painted with regular food coloring and flavoring sprayed onto paper. After hours under hot lights, it became a sticky bacteria trap. Julie Dawn Cole later admitted it tasted disgusting, like cardboard with cough syrup. Worse, multiple cast members licked the same spots during repeated takes. No sanitization, no replacements. It wasn't whimsical, it was a germ-sharing nightmare. What audiences saw as a clever magical invention was, for the actors, a gross endurance test. The idea of lickable wallpaper captured imaginations, but the reality was far from sanitary. It was a scene that kids dreamed about, but the cast wished they could forget. The everlasting gobstopper was a rare prop. The everlasting gobstopper wasn't just a clever invention from Roald Dahl's imagination. It became one of the rarest props in movie history. Only a handful were made, handcrafted from resin, and painted to shine under studio lights. The actors treated them like throwaway candy, but years later, collectors realized their immense value. In fact, one of the original props sold at auction for over $40,000. For Peter Ostrom and the other kids, it was just another piece of fake candy. But for fans, it became a symbol of the movie's magic, a tiny object that carried the weight of nostalgia and rarity. The irony? Something designed to be everlasting didn't last at all, except in the hands of a lucky few who saved what most of the crew considered junk. The Oompa Loompa songs were nightmares to record. The Oompa Loompa musical numbers might feel seamless in the film, but the recording process was brutal. Each song was written by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley, with strange rhythms and tongue-twisting lyrics adapted from Roald Dahl's original text. The non-English-speaking actors couldn't perform them live, so a group of studio singers dubbed everything. Even then, syncing the choreography with pre-recorded tracks caused endless headaches. Mel Stewart grew frustrated, often demanding reshoots when the lip movements didn't match the playback. The result was dozens of takes for a single scene. What looks like playful, effortless musicality on screen was stitched together from frustration, confusion, and relentless repetition. The Oompa Loompas may have sung about moral lessons, but behind the camera, it was chaos that nearly broke the crew's patience. The golden tickets were foil-covered trash. The iconic golden tickets weren't actually made of gold foil. Instead, they were cheaply produced by wrapping regular paper in shiny foil and running them through a printer. The prop department had to make dozens, since kids often bent or tore them during takes. Peter Ostrom admitted that the tickets felt fragile and flimsy, nothing like the solid magical invitations they appear to be on screen. Many of the props disintegrated by the end of production, and almost none survived intact. Today, replicas are mass-produced and sold worldwide, but the originals are nearly impossible to find. What audiences saw as glowing symbols of destiny were, in reality, fragile pieces of trash that barely held together. The magic was all in the lighting and the editing that made them sparkle brighter than they ever did on set. The cast bonded through mischief. Despite the difficult conditions, the child actors formed real friendships on set. Between takes, they pulled pranks, sneaked candy from the set, and teased one another relentlessly. Peter Ostrom and Denise Nickerson, Violet Beauregard, admitted they often wandered into areas of the factory set where they weren't supposed to go, marveling at unfinished props or eating sweets meant only for decoration. Their camaraderie helped balance the tension of filming under long hours and strict direction. Yet the bonds faded after filming wrapped. Ostrom famously walked away from Hollywood forever, while others drifted into different careers. For a brief window, though, the kids weren't just co-stars, they were a gang of mischievous golden ticket holders, making memories that would stick far longer than the taste of any prop candy. The film was a box office flop. It may be a beloved classic now, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory flopped when it premiered in 1971. Critics were divided, calling it strange and uneven, and audiences didn't rush to theaters. Quaker Oats, frustrated that their candy line failed, didn't push marketing hard. The film limped at the box office, disappearing quickly. It wasn't until the 1980s, when it aired on television and later on VHS, that it exploded into a cult classic. Generations of kids discovered the factory on home screens, not in cinemas. What began as a corporate tie-in gone wrong transformed into a timeless cultural phenomenon. Willy Wonka wasn't born a classic. It became one, rescued not by Hollywood hype, but by the quiet magic of home viewings and word of mouth. Bonus fact: a dark real-life inspiration behind Wonka. The character of Willy Wonka may feel whimsical, but Roald Dahl drew inspiration from a darker truth. As a child, Dahl's school was used by Cadbury to test experimental chocolate bars. Students received samples, then wrote essays judging their quality. For Dahl, the experience was both thrilling and intimidating, corporate candy giants using children as unpaid taste testers. That memory haunted him, fueling the creation of a factory owner who both delights and terrifies kids. In a way, Wonka's eccentric cruelty wasn't pure fantasy. It was rooted in real childhood experiences of power, secrecy, and manipulation by the candy industry. What audiences see as playful menace carried personal echoes for Dahl, making Willy Wonka not just a character, but a haunting reflection of industrial power wrapped in sugar. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory wasn't simply a children's film. It was a strange blend of corporate marketing, chaotic production, and artistic rebellion. What audiences saw as a dreamland of candy was built on heat exhaustion, foul-smelling rivers, and unpredictable performances. And yet, from that chaos came something enduring, a film that outgrew its cynical origins and became a cultural touchstone. If you love these revelations, hit like, subscribe, and share your favorite Willy Wonka moment in the comments. After all, in the words of the man himself, a little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men.